it is a fibromuscular partition which separates the pelvic cavity from the anatomical perineum. So what does it compromises of? It compromises of the pubococcygeus muscle, puborectalis muscle, pubovaginalis muscles, and coccygeus muscle. So puborectalis, pubovaginalis, and pubococcygeus, they're commonly known as the libidini muscles. So what are the functions of the pelvic floor muscles? It helps in the parturition, it helps in the defecations, it supports the pelvic head during cervical dilatations, and its main function is it assists the anterior abdominal wall in containing abdominal and pelvic contents. So there are two gaps in the pelvic diaphragm. So one is known as the hiatus urogenitalis and another is known as the hiatus rectalis. So as the name suggests, urogenitalis भनेपछि के हुन्छ, urethra and vagina हुन्छ, अनि rectalis भनेपछि it transmits the rectum. So what are the structures in relation to the pelvic floor? के हुन्छ, anteriorly to posteriorly के हुन्छ, the bladder, vagina, rectum, and all the empty spaces they are filled with the cellular tissues. And it also contains the uterine and vaginal arteries and the nerves. And in relation to the के हुन्छ, pelvic floor मा के हुन्छ, it is related to the anatomical perineum. So what is the nerve supply? It is S3 and S4, inferior rectal nerve and the perineal branch of the perineal nerve. So के हुन्छ, muscles to the inferior to the pelvic floor हुन्छ urogenital diaphragm. Okay, inferior to the pelvic floor muscle. So urogenital diaphragm के हुन्छ, it consists of two pouches. One is superficial pouch, one is the deep pouch. Superficial मा के हुन्छ, superficial pouch consists of it is ischiocavernous muscles, bulbospongineous muscles. See, this is the sorry, I have showed you the wrong slides, right? So this is the ischiocavernous muscles. This is the bulbospongineous.
Slide shared भएको छैन.
हजुर,
slide shared भएको छैन.
Slide भएको छैन. I have sent you है ल फक्नुस्. Again गयो. Just recap मात्रै भयो न, ठिकै छ. Again I'll share it है त, एकछिन share screen गरेर. Anatomy त बुझारै पर्छ. So आयो? Is it said?
Yes, ma'am.
आयो है. So superficial perineal pouch and deep perineal pouch. Okay. So हजुर
Ma'am, अलि बिस्तारै भन्नु न, एकदम फास्ट भयो.
फास्ट भयो ल. So superficial perineal pouch हुन्छ, deep perineal pouch हुन्छ है. So superficial perineal pouch भनेको हामी चाहिँ अगाडि हेरिरहेछ नि यहाँ पिक्चर देखिरहेछ तपाईहरुले. So this is the lateral portion, this is the ischiocavernous muscles. यो जुन साइडमा छ नि, this is the ischiocavernous muscles, and the one surrounding the vagina and urethra, this is the bulbospongineous muscles, and the outer in between, this is the superficial transverse perineal muscles. And when you remove this, अगाडिको portion हटाएपछि भित्र के हुन्छ, there is the deep perineal muscles and external sphincter urethral muscles. So these are the component of the urogenital triangle. Clear, sir? बुझ्यो? सचिन, आवाज आइरहेछ?
हजुर म्याम आइरहेछ म्याम.
So these are urogenital triangle भनेको, diaphragm भनेको, they are the के हुन्छ, muscles inferior to the pelvic muscle, के अरे pelvic floor है. So pelvic floor को तल के हुन्छ, urogenital triangle हुन्छ. So urogenital triangle भनेको, it consists of superficial perineal pouch and it consists of deep perineal pouch. So superficial perineal pouch भनेको के हो भने, it consists of ischiocavernous, bulbospongineous and superficial transverse perineal muscles. So अगाडिको portion हो, this one, this is the ischiocavernous, this is the bulbospongineous muscles, and this is the superficial transverse perineal muscles. And when you remove this deep portion मा के हुन्छ, they are the deep perineal muscles and then external sphincter urethral muscles. Right? And the downward portion, this is the anal canal. So anal triangle. So anal triangle भनेको के, it has basically no significance or no significance. Right? It contains के हुन्छ, terminal part of the anal canal हुन्छ अनि nerves vessels हरु हुन्छ. Okay? So now अर्को के हुन्छ तपाईको अब perineum हुन्छ है. So perineum भनेको के भयो तपाईको, one is obstetrical perineum हुन्छ, another is anatomical perineum हुन्छ. So wait, अब skip है एकछिन. So obstetrical perineum भनेको चाहिँ बाउन्ड्री के भयो त अगाडि, obstetrical perineum को बाउन्ड्री के हुन्छ अगाडि, it is symphysis pubis. It is a clear problem छ के कन्ट्रोलमा. Yes. Ions के साथ कुछ नहीं उफ हाँ बड़े So, this is the key anatomical perineum. So, what are the boundaries? This portion is anteriorly, it is pubic, and laterally it is the ischiopubic ramus, ischial tuberosities, and sacrotuberous ligament. So, this portion is the sacrotuberous ligament, and posteriorly it is the tip of the coccyx. So, this is the anatomical perineum. So, anatomical perineum, it is divided into two structures. One is the urogenital diaphragm, one is the anal triangle, So, urogenital triangle ma ke huncha? It is separated by the imaginary line between the two ischial tuberosities. Okay. And urogenital triangle, we have discussed, it contains superficial perineal pouch and deep perineal pouch. And anal triangle, it has no obstetric significance. Right? So what does it contain? It contains ischiorectal fossa and terminal part of the anal canal. Right? So we have discussed. We will discuss. This is not working at all, right? So obstetric perineum bhaneko ke ho? Anatomical perineum we have discussed now. Obstetric perineum bhaneko, it is a pyramid structure. So it lies between the vagina and the anal canal, and the apex it is pointed towards the vagina, and it is continuous with the recto-vaginal septum. So that is also known as that is the portion. That portion it is known as the obstetrical perineum. So it is the structure between the vagina and the anal canal. So it is almost around 4 into 4 centimeter. And it is a diamond-shaped structure. So what are the functions of the obstetrical perineum? So it supports the posterior vaginal wall. Right? And it also supports the levator ani. And what is its importance? Its importance is that childbirth during labor you give the episiotomy in this place. Surgical incision, it is given in the obstetrical perineum. So this perineum, it is vulnerable to injury during the childbirth. Right? Pelvic perineum. Pelvic peritoneum, there are pelvic peritoneum. It covers, it covers the superior surface of the bladder. Right? And at the level of the isthmus, it forms a pouch. So that pouch is known as the vesical pouch. Right? And from there, it is firmly adhered to the uterus, anterior part of the uterus, then to the posterior wall of the uterus, right? And upper wall of the posterior vaginal wall. Again, there it forms another pouch, which is known as the POD. Right? So anteriorly, it forms a pouch, which is known as the vesical pouch. Posteriorly, it forms a pouch, which is known as the pouch of Douglas. And that pouch of Douglas, it is continuous with the pararectal fossa. Okay. Now broad ligament. So broad ligament, these are the supporting structures of the uterus. So broad ligament, broad ligament, it consists of two layers, anterior and posterior, and extend from the lateral border of the uterus to the lateral pelvic wall. Origin it is from the lateral border of the uterus. Insertion is the lateral pelvic wall. Okay, so the anterior layer, it forms the utrovesical pouch, and the posterior layer, it forms the pouch of Douglas. Okay, now infundibular pelvic ligament, as the name suggests, what is the origin? It is from the infundibulum, a part of the fallopian tube, to the lateral pelvic wall. So insertion is infundibulum part of the fallopian tube, and insertion is the lateral pelvic wall. So what are the contain? It contains ovarian vessels, nerves, and lymphatics of the ovary. Right? fallopian tube, and the body of the uterus. It also contains mesovarium, mesosalpinx, and mesometrium. So what are the contents of the broad ligaments? के हुन्छ? Fallopian tube हुन्छ, ovarian ligament, round ligament, and अरु के हुन्छ? Uterine and ovarian vessels. There is nerves and lymphatics of the uterus, fallopian tube, and ovary. So these are the contents of the broad ligaments. And developmental and functions. So it is developed from the two Mullerian ducts. Right? So it is basically forms the planes for the different vessels, lymphatics, and nerves. And it is also one of the supporting structures of the uterus. Right? A pelvic fascia cellular tissues. Right? Pelvic wall they are very fascia, they are very membranous, and they are very tough. Right? And it is continuous with the internus and piriformis muscles and attached to the margin of the bone. Okay. And we are mainly concerned with the fascia of the pelvic floor. So it merges with the visceral layer of the pelvic fascia covering the anal canal. Now pelvic cellular tissues. So these are loose cellular tissues which fills up all the empty spaces. And what does it contains? It contains fatty connective tissue and unstripped muscle fibers. Right? So it condenses around the vaginal vault, supravaginal part of the cervix, broad ligament, and it is known as the parametrium. Right? All the ligaments we discussed, uterosacral, McEnroth's, they are formed by the condensation of the pelvic cellular tissues. Okay, so all the supporting ligaments, they are formed by the condensation of the pelvic cellular tissues. Right? So now these are the main supports of the uterus. Right? So one is the McEnroth's ligament. Origin it is supravaginal part of the cervix and lateral vaginal wall. And insertion it is parietal fascia covering the obstetrical internals, almost lateral pelvic wall. Okay, and near the cervix main it is crossed by the uterine artery and the ureter enters the ureteric tunnel. While surgery you have to be careful cross uterine artery. So this is a surgical importance. Now another is the uterosacral ligament. So another name for the uterosacral ligament is the suspensory ligament. Okay. So what is the origin? Origin is from the lateral surface of the cervix at the level of the internal os. And what is the insertion? It is the third sacral vertebrae. Okay. And cervical is blends with the endopelvic fascia ring surrounding the part of the supravaginal cervix and the uterus. Right? Now pubocervical fascia, as the name suggests, cervix to symphysis pubis. Right? Origin fibers anterolateral aspect of the cervix and insertion back of the pubic bone. Okay, so some of the these ligaments are blended with the cardinal ligament because origin we have studied supravaginal part of the cervix. Cardinal ligament. Right? Now, what are the functions of the pelvic cellular tissues? Isko functions kya one, it supports the pelvic organs. Another, it forms the protective sheath for the blood vessels and the terminal part of the ureter. Right? And significance, it is also the route of spread of infections. Right? And during pregnancy, there will be the marked hypertrophy tissue of the pelvic cellular tissues. There will be the marked hypertrophy. Now, round ligaments, these are basically, these are not the supporting structures. Round ligaments, ovarian ligaments, these are not the supporting structures. Supporting structures, main supports of the uterus, McEnroth's, uterosacral ligaments, and the pubocervical ligaments. These are just the accessory ligaments. So, round ligaments origin it is from the cornua of the uterus. Insertion it is the anterolateral part of the labia majora. And what is its length? It is 10 to 12 centimeters. Right? And its significance, though it is not the supporting structure, its shortening, it helps to keep the uterus in the anteverted position. In case of sometime in retroverted position, we do the shortening of the round ligament to keep it in an anteverted position. Okay, and they are also continuous with the they are developmentally, they are similar to the guberna column of the testis. Ovarian ligament, or accessory ligament. These are the fibromuscular structures. Again, it is attached to the inner pole of the ovary, right? and of the के हुन्छ अनि below कहाँसम्म जान्छ ovary बाट to the cornua of the uterus है. So its length is 2.5 centimeter है. So it is also one of the accessory ligament. Basically it has no significance. कहाँबाट start हुन्छ? It starts from the inner pole of the ovary अनि कहाँसम्म जान्छ in the cornua of the uterus है. And morphologically it is similar to the round ligament है. And developmentally it corresponds to the gubernaculum of the testis है. So what we have learned today as a pelvic floor muscles. So muscles मा के पर्यो? Levator ani पर्यो, coccygeus. What are the components of the levator ani? भनेपछि pubococcygeus, pubovaginalis and puborectalis. And then functions के हो? Levator ani के pelvic floor muscles को, pelvic floor muscles को के it supports the anterior abdominal wall muscles and pelvic organs. अर्को चाहिँ it helps in defecations, it helps in parturations, it helps in the cervical dilatation of the head. It helps in the cervical dilatation है. अनि अर्को भयो के भयो? त्यसपछि we have studied the perineum हुन्छ है. Perineum मा के हुन्छ? There is the obstetrical perineum हुन्छ and another is the anatomical perineum हुन्छ. So anatomical perineum मा के हुन्छ? It contains urogenital triangle and anal triangle. So urogenital triangle it consists of two pouches. One is the superficial pouch and one is the deep perineal pouch. Right? And what does anal triangle contains? Anal triangle contains the anal terminal part of the anal canal and the ischiorectal fossa. Right? So anal triangle basically it has no obstetrical significance. Right? Then we come to the pelvic cellular tissues. Pelvic cellular tissues ke huncha? These are the connective tissues, right? And which consist of fatty connective tissues and unstripped muscles fibers. And they fill all the empty spaces of the pelvic floor muscles. And it at certain places it condenses. Right? When it condenses, it forms a tough membranous structures. So these structures they form the supporting structures of the uterus. Right? Now we'll study one is the one is the uterosacral ligaments by McInroth's ligament by pubocervical ligaments by and they all meet at the supravaginal cervix right. Meeting point like parametrium right. So let's discuss one by one. One is McInroth's ligament. So its origin from the supravaginal part of the cervix. Insertion comes a lateral pelvic wall mounts. Okay. So what is its surgical importance? Surgical importance it contains at the point of the cervix. One, it contains the uterine artery. Cervical descending cervical artery. At this point, ureter let's say uterine artery like cross corsa. So you have to be very careful because while we do cesarean extend ureter there can be injury to the ureter. Right? When we take stitch, angle ureter tie up. So this is the significance of the McInroth's ligament. Right? अर्को के भयो तपाईको uterosacral ligament भयो भनेपछि uterosacral को origin कहाँ हुन्छ? Origin कहाँ हुन्छ भने तपाईको internal os को point मा हुन्छ है cervix अनि insertion कहाँ हुन्छ? It is the S3 है S3 portion of the sacral vertebrae. अब तपाईको के भयो त यसको significance के हो भनेको it is the main supporting structure of the uterus है. अर्को भनेको pubocervical. So as the name suggests कहाँबाट आउँछ? Symphysis pubis बाट uterus बाट आउँछ. Insertion कहाँ हुन्छ? It inserts in the symphysis pubis हुन्छ. अनि since के हुन्छ this is some of the ligaments of the fibers of the pubocervical ligament it also condenses with the McInroth's ligament किनभने McInroth ligament को origin त्यही हुन्छ. Okay. So another is broad ligament. It is not the main supporting structure but it also supports the uterus. भनेको broad ligament के हुन्छ? There are it consists of two layers, right? Anterior layer and posterior layer. So what is the origin? Origin is the lateral part of the uterus. Insertion comes the lateral pelvic wall mounts. Right? So it consists of two anterior and posterior layer. Anterior layer it forms the vesical pouch and the posterior layer it forms the pouch of Douglas. Right? अर्को दुईटा accessory ligaments के हो? Round ligament हो अनि ovarian ligament हो. है basically यसको के पनि रोल छैन. They are के हुन्छ? Morphologically they correspond to each other and developmentally they are similar to the gubernaculum of the testis. Right? Round ligament को चाहिँ surgical importance के हो भने though it is not a supporting structure but if in case of sometimes in case of retroverted uterus we shorten the round ligament to keep the uterus in the anteverted position. Is it clear? Hello, Sachin. Hello.
Perineum.
Yes, ma'am.
Clear भयो? You पढ्नै पर्छ है. Since it is online class, I'm not able to show you pictures properly actually. Actually,
Okay,
any
ma'am.
queries let me know है त.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.